got us through imagination and creativity. It should be encouraged, not crushed. Do you agree? 80295. Get your text into me. I'll read out some more throughout the programme. Still to come, though.
I'm here to try to bring WrestleMania to London.
WWD, that's a different sport altogether. WWE legend John Cena there. He wants to bring WrestleMania to the UK. So look out for your, maybe get your knee pads, get your spandex, get your leotards ready, because we're going to be hearing why this is a great time to be a British wrestling fan. Also, Mr. Blue.
Sunny day, another bright blue sky. Another day, another young brother died. These are the things I went through when I was growing.
Brian Gilmore will be here with his surgery shortly. If you've got any questions for him about anything to do with buying, selling or even renting, get them in now. You can call him 08085 92 95 00, or you can send him a text on 80295. And
you used to take days for granted. Yeah, I'm going to do it tomorrow, or I'll go and spend time with that friend tomorrow or the next day. But now it's like, no, I'm just going to do it now.
I'm going to be speaking to the inspirational Alana Marshall, who's been diagnosed with MS, yet continues to play football at the highest level.
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Right, it's Tuesday morning, it's just after 10 o'clock, which means it's now time for our weekly Name the Place quiz here on BBC Radio Scotland. If you're not familiar with it, this is how it goes, right? Carol Huff provides an excellent list of mind-boggling clues that should lead you to a place in Scotland. And when you think you've got the right answer, you send me a text, 80295. When someone gets the right answer, you'll hear this noise. That means someone's cracked it, right? So are you ready to play? This is the first clue, okay? Today's clue 1. Today's place name shares part of its name with a Scottish racecourse. Today's place name shares part of its name with a Scottish racecourse. If you think you know, text me 80295. We're going to be dripping the clues to you right across the morning. But before we speak about wrestling, let's get some music for you. The first of the morning, it's Madonna, and this is Cherish here in BBC Radio Scotland. Cherished by Madonna on BBC Radio Scotland. It's 11 minutes after 10. It's Connie with you until midday today. Hope you're doing well. Now, hype and wrestling go hand in hand, usually, don't they? But even by WWE standards, there was quite a bit of excitement when John Cena recently announced that he wanted to bring WrestleMania to the UK for the very first time. It's also been announced, by the way, that WWE Live is returning to Scotland later this year. So could we be in line to see more events on these shores? Here to chat more to me about this, Alex Davies-Jones, co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Wrestling. Morning, Alex.
Good morning.
And John McAnally, super wrestling fan. John, morning to you. Oh, John, are you with me? We'll get John back. Actually, I think there's a bit of an issue with his line. Alex, right. For people who are not necessarily initiated already, what's WrestleMania?
WrestleMania is the biggest event in the wrestling calendar in the year. You think Super Bowl, you think World Cup final, you think Olympics, but for wrestling. And this is the biggest event that happens every single year, always in North America. And the thought of bringing it to the UK is incredibly exciting and has got the entire wrestling fans here in the UK, but also around the world, really, really excited.
Right, John's back with us now. John is a super fan. John, we were just hearing from Alex there, like if people don't know what wrestling is, what it basically means for WrestleMania to come to the UK. I'm suitably excited. I can't even imagine what you must be feeling.
No, it would be great if it did come to the UK. We've not had like a major pay-per-view here, but we had Clash at Castle last year. We had Money in the Bank there just now. But, you know, the big WWE show that was back when SummerSlam came back in the early 90s and, you know, sold out Wembley. We've got another wrestling promotion, AEW, doing a big show at Wembley at the end of August as well. But to have WrestleMania in the UK would be absolutely amazing and certainly send wrestling fans across the country into a frenzy.
How big is wrestling in Scotland, John? How many people? Do you have sort of groups of friends that you're into wrestling with, or is this something that you just maybe speak to people online about?
Well, no, I think being a wrestling fan, you know, I think when you're a kid you get into it, and then I was a lapsed wrestling fan, and then for some reason when I was a student started watching it again, and then it's like a secret society almost, Connie. It's like you come out to your friends, go, yeah, if you see someone with a wrestling t-shirt or a wrestling show, and you go, are you a wrestling fan? Aye, and then you start talking about it. It is really big in Scotland. I mean, there was a resurgence. With the Insane Fight Club documentary, lots of promotions were kind of born out of that. We have ICW, we've got PCW, you've got Discovery Wrestling, WrestleZone. There's so many independent wrestling companies across Scotland now, and it is a massive, massive scene. And you've seen, for example, Grado, who I work beside on the Wrestling Daft podcast. He's obviously, taken that platform and went on to superstardom at the BBC as well.
Good old Grado. Yeah, we know him well. Alex, what about you? What was the sort of route into it for you?
Yeah, John's right. You fall in love with wrestling as a child. At least I did anyway. I have a big brother who got me into wrestling because it was all that was on our TV when we were little. And then he did used to practice the moves on me at home, even though you're not meant to do
Standard,
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, standard, having a big brother. But then I definitely fell back in love with it sort of in recent years, particularly with the rise of female wrestling, the rise of great British wrestlers, smashing it around the world. You mentioned Scotland. You can't not mention Drew McIntyre, who is one of the biggest wrestling superstars, flying the flag for Scotland, flying the flag for the UK. You've got some great Welsh wrestlers, English wrestlers smashing it not just in America but in Japan, and really, becoming household names, which is fantastic. But as John said, it's something that you sort of keep to yourself, but then when you announce it, when you come out, as you will, to being a wrestling fan, you'd be surprised at how many other wrestling fans there are. At least I found that in Parliament. There's quite a lot of us.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth there about mentioning Parliament, because I was quite surprised to hear that there was an all-party parliamentary group on wrestling, right? That was a surprise in itself. What do you guys do? What does that look like? What do you talk about?
Yeah, we use that surprise to our advantage. People underestimate us at their peril. So we set up this all-party parliamentary group at the start of the pandemic because we are first and foremost a group of wrestling fans who love British wrestling. That's what's brought us together. We are cross-party. We've got representatives from Scotland, from Wales, and from England and Northern Ireland. And we love British wrestling, UK wrestling. And what brought us together was seeing the industry that we love go through something really awful. They had the Speaking Out movement, which was wrestling's Me Too, which was where women were coming out and talking about the horrendous abuse and sexual harassment that they were facing in the industry. But then also, because the industry is completely unregulated, they don't have a governing body, they don't have anyone speaking up for them. They weren't able to access any of the COVID support packages. They weren't able to clarify what the guidelines were for when wrestling was allowed to start again. And because of this lack of regulation, so many issues have been allowed to persist for so many years. They've had nobody speaking up for them. So us in privileged positions as members of parliament thought that we could do something, and we've actually held the world's first wrestling conference in parliament. We've done some really innovative work on concussion in wrestling with Loughborough University. We've been working with some great independent promotions, some of the ones that John mentioned, trying to encourage the UK scene to use that soft power with the UK Department for Trade and Business around the world, how we can really utilise our wrestlers around the world flying the flag for the UK.
Yeah, because in reality, Alex, and the bottom line, I suppose, from an economic perspective, this is big business.
It is. You know, you mentioned Clash at the Castle, which was WWE's huge pay-per-view that they held in Cardiff last year. The economic impact assessment from that showed that Wales net benefited nearly 22 million from that, let alone what the, soft power implications are ahead of, of showcasing Wales on a global stage. So this is massive, and it does have great economic potential.
John, when you heard what John Cena had to say about bringing it to London, were you surprised by that?
I was surprised. I was surprised that John Cena actually turned up at the event. It was a big surprise to everyone. I think from, being quite a cynic, though, with the rival promotion doing a big Wembley show, I don't know how much, because WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl, as Alex was saying earlier, it's booked in advance for the cities, so we already know next year and the year after that. So it would be further down the line if WrestleMania was to come to the UK. But yeah, it was, it was a big surprise, but I don't know if he was just saying it off his own back, or if he was just saying it to kind of taunt the rivals a little bit.
Well, that's what wrestlers do, is it not? Just trying to sort of poke the bear a little bit. What? Who's your favourite, John?
Oh, it depends what era you're going for here, Connie. Is it current wrestler or is it all-time wrestler?
Well, give me a current and give me a sort of GOAT of wrestling terms.
Right, okay, I'll go current. There's a guy called LA Knight in the WWE who's, in the wrestling terms, getting himself over at the moment. He's really one to watch for the future. He's going to be a big star. And I think my all-time favourite has to be The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, who's obviously now contemplating running for president off the back of wrestling. One of Hollywood's greatest actors, but no, he was a great wrestler back in his day.
Alex?
Oh, well, yeah, you can't not mention Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but for me, it would have to be Charlotte Flair. Love female wrestling, as I mentioned, and she is just the GOAT in terms of female wrestlers.
Is The Undertaker still on the scene? Or Bret the Hitman Hart? And this is all the ones I can think about from when I was younger.
The Undertaker was in Glasgow just last week doing a one-man show at the Academy.
No way.
Yeah,
they're still around on the circuit. They never retire.
And I suppose when you think about wrestling, and again, this is coming from a perspective of, I'm thinking back. So, Alex, I'm the same. I've got older brothers, and I remember that the figurines and the sort of, plastic wrestling ring that they used to be kicking about the house somewhere. This idea of it being a legitimate contest, where are we sitting on that, Alex? I mean, can you watch this and actually really sort of get excited about it, or is it just about the show?
Of course you can. No, you can get excited about it. We've had this big debate between us as parliamentarians. We did our big inquiry report looking into UK wrestling, and we had to determine whether it was a sport or an art form, because part of the problem with wrestling and why it falls through the gaps is because it isn't clearly defined. And we sort of established that if you are training in a wrestling school, then that should be classed as a sport because it falls under the same sort of category as martial arts or dance or acrobatics and gymnastics. But then when you are seeing a performer performance, because it is predetermined, it should be classed as an art form and it should be a show and you should be enjoyed. But obviously you don't know the outcome. You can cheer on your favourites. That's the best part of it, you know?
John?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as Alex says, it's sports entertainment, and we don't want to break kayfabe. There's another wrestling term for you. But
what does that mean?
It's basically just pretend.
Right.
So wrestlers work in kayfabe, so they work in character. For example, The Undertaker. But yeah, it's, you know, like Alex says, it's sports entertainment. You know, because there's this point where sports meet entertainment, and that's how we describe wrestling as sports entertainment.
Who decides the narrative?
The creative. I mean, the thing is, it's like a giant soap opera, wrestling. That's effectively what it is. You know, it's like a soap opera for Wayne's. Really, because it's, you know, you've got lots of guys working behind the scenes. I mean, top writers work on behind the scenes and writing the storylines, and these guys plan months and months and months ahead, much like the soap operas, of where storylines will go. Where there's been a storyline wrestling running for about 2.5 years now, which people are so into, involving Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. But it's a huge business and a huge industry. But there's so many people that work behind the scenes to make it what it is.
That's genuinely news to me. That's actually really fascinating. So thank you so much for enlightening me, John. Good to speak to you as always.
Good speaking to you, Connie.
John McAnally there from the Wrestling Daft podcast and Wrestling Superfan, and Alex Davis, Jones co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Wrestling. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Connie.
10:23 on BBC Radio Scotland.
Are you looking for a fun, interactive, action-packed way to raise money for your school fundraiser, special event, or non-profit? Tag team with Memphis Wrestling. Call now at 901-729-6353.
It's Connie McLaughlin with you until noon today. Time for your second Name the Place clue. Clue 2. It is and isn't Scandinavia. Clue 2. It is and it isn't Scandinavian. I beg your pardon. It is and it isn't Scandinavian. Right, so clue 1, today's place name shares part of its name with the Scottish racecourse. Clue 2, it is and it isn't Scandinavian. Does that make it any easier for you? Still to come.
Do me a favor and don't knock cottage cheese until you try it this way. This is high protein cheesecake that you can also use as a fruit dip.
It's a TikTok favourite, but why is cottage cheese making a comeback, and is it as good for you as it's often claimed? And what's fubbing? Right? How can you stop doing it? We're going to find out a little later on.
Got something to say? Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Some wrong answers for you as well for Name the Place. Fraserburgh, Lynn in Aberdeenshire. No. Jedburgh, John and Paisley. It's not. Keep them coming in. 80295. This is Labyrinth.
Ask me if there'll come a time when I grow tired of you. Never my love, never my love. You wonder if this heart of mine will lose its desire for you. Never my love, never my love. What makes you think love will end when you know that my whole life depends on you? Da, 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 da. Say you fear I'll change my mind, I won't require you. Never my love, spend your whole life with me. Never mind love, never mind love, never mind love. Never mind love, never mind love, never mind love.
On BBC Radio Scotland, it's just coming up to 10:30. I hope you're having a good morning so far. It is Tuesday morning, which means it's time to welcome back our resident property guru, Brian Gilmore from Indigo Square Property. Morning, Brian.
Morning, Connie.
We have got lots and lots to talk about. We've got a few questions in already, actually, for our surgery after 11 o'clock. But whether it's anything affecting, you want to buy a property, you want to sell a property, you want to rent something, 80295 if you want to send Brian a text, or you can give him a call, 08085 92 95 00. Before the surgery, though, at 11, let's have a look at what's happening right now, because there's... As always, we're talking about this choppy market. Is that a fair way to describe it right now?
I think the word you're supposed to use is challenging. That type of trying not to sound too negative. Yep.
Yeah, well, people are trying to sell right now. Are we seeing a big change in terms of the prices of houses right now, Brian?
Well, one of the big things, I've got friends who are trying to buy a property in Edinburgh at the moment, and they're quite happy because the heat's been taken out of the market. There's greater certainty about what they need to do. They need to just pay in and around the home report value. A year ago, this time last year, when we were talking about places in Edinburgh, people paying 15, 20, 30% over the home report value. So that's one of the steps that's happened with this massive change in interest rates in the last 6-7 months.
Are there any areas? Because I remember we had this conversation many months ago. I think when the market was inflated, the way you're talking about, that really you think that there's areas that any sort of drop in price doesn't necessarily affect. Are there still areas that's the case, that if you were selling your property, you could still expect to go above home report?
There will always be. Best example I can always give. I remember when I started in estate agency a very long time ago. I was in the East End of Glasgow, and people would be talking to me about why they were looking to buy in the East End because prices in the West End were too high, and it was just a temporary blip and whatever. And I remember saying to people that there was an area in the East End of Glasgow that was built as a mirror image of a place called Hindland in the West End of Glasgow, and that was built as a mirror image because property prices in Hindland were too high. And I said, if property prices in Hindland were too high 120 years ago and they're too high today, then places like that, so parts of Glasgow, parts of Edinburgh, somewhere like St Andrews, for example, it's all relative. So when places are falling, they might be static. When places are static, they might be growing by only 2, 3, 4%.
But still growing.
But they're still growing because it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because those are the places where prices are still doing okay, so people see it as a secure place to live because they know that their investment will be fine in terms of where they're buying. And the other reason why these places always do well is invariably it's because they're perfectly placed for schooling and transport and commuting and all these things.
There's an awful lot of panic for people when you see not only the mortgage headlines, but I suppose whenever people go and open their mail and they see what's potentially happening to their own mortgage, and even the thought of trying to get a mortgage if you've not got one already.
Yeah, and I know it's I saw Jeremy Hunt getting into trouble the other day for saying people need to grit their teeth and get through it, and the quicker we can endure the pain, the shorter it'll last. And there is an element of there is some truth to that, and whilst it's not very comfortable while you're in the middle of it, if you look back in hindsight with all periods where we've gone through massive bursts of increasing in interest rates and costs for people, when you, as I say, when you're in the middle of it and you just don't have that extra £100 to pay the extra £200 in your mortgage, it's all well and good somebody on the radio saying it won't last forever. But these things never do. They are sort of concentrated. We have had 13 months of interest rate rises, so that we are now at a point where interest rates are the highest they've been, or the Bank of England base rate's the highest it's been for 15 years. All predictions are that by this time next year, we might be seeing interest rates back and 2-3% back below where they are. But of course, predictions can always be made fool of all of us. So it's difficult to be precise, but I think we're in the middle of a really challenging time just now. But all indications are to do with interest rates that we're close to the peak of the worst part.
OK, right, Brian is back with us just after 11 o'clock this morning, so you've still got plenty of time to get your property questions in. You can call 08085 92 95 00, or you can send us a text on 80295. Let's get some more music for you now. Here is Supertramp. It's Dreamer by Supertramp. You're listening to BBC Radio Scotland. Now, my next guest is the captain of the Spartan FC's women's team in the Scottish top flight. She was also diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in November 2021. And despite the condition, she's very active. She's continued to play at the highest level while also working as a BT engineer and being a mum as well. It's a story that she tells in the documentary Captain Alana, Tackling MS. It's now available on the BBC iPlayer, and she joins me on the programme now. Morning, Alana.
Morning, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks for coming on. Is this one of these conversations that still, you know, even though it's been since 2021 that you got the diagnosis, that you still can't really believe you're having?
Yeah, I still struggle to talk about it, to be fair, every day. So it's obviously really, really good to come on and try and raise some awareness. So,
what made you want to do the documentary in the first place?
I mean, I got pushed to kind of speak about it because not the documentary as such, but when I first came out being diagnosed, it was kind of one of those conversations between me and my coach and a few others that it was the time to talk about it, to let people know what was actually going on, because, you know, I'd took a couple of weeks out of football and stuff like that, and it was a bit unknown for myself to be away from football, so questions were being asked.
And then you decided to give them the answer, which in itself is, you know, I don't even know how you begin to have that conversation. But let's go back to the moment that you started to think there was something going on. Well, take us back to that point.
Just like I said in the documentary, it was just basically having, you know, I'd done a lot of running, and then it was a little bit of burning in the abdomen, a little bit of itchiness, and then, to be fair, when I went to the hospital, the doctors said, "Oh, do you know, it's shingles?" So they gave me some antiviral medication, and then just as it kind of went on, I knew in my head, I was like, "No, this isn't shingles." So basically, it kind of went further than that. It's continuing to play, and then the burningness kind of spread down to my groin area. And I thought by this point, you know, I was feeling so depressed, so low, couldn't lift myself, and had a few emotional chats with my family members, and we decided we'd have to push, like, to get this seen to. So we got some MRI scans done, and eventually, like maybe about a year after the first kind of symptom, was when I got diagnosed over a telephone.
Because it was COVID?
I think it was this limited, facial appointments. It wasn't until maybe, I think February 2022 was the first time I'd seen a neurologist, and they actually diagnosed me with what kind of MS it was.
So at that point, I mean, how much did you actually know about MS? Was that something that someone had mentioned before, or was that something that just came totally out of the blue?
Do you know, it's funny because as soon as something happens to you, you automatically Google, don't you? So like Google's the worst thing you can do. But straight on to Google, and all I seen was MS. I was like, oh, there's no way I have MS. That's a major disease. That I have not got that. And here we are. Yeah. So I mean, my thought on MS was just, I thought, do you know, this is serious. Even when I got the phone call, I remember asking her, I was like, do I have a limited time here, because I know nothing about this disease. And I remember just being in tears.
What did they say to you?
She was like, no, do you know, nowadays we have so many treatments that slow progressions down and people can live a normal day-to-day life, whatever that is, still, and do you know, just don't panic so much just now. But I'm like, well, it's easier said than done when you've just been told over a phone call that you have MS.
So from that point on, because you've got a wee girl as well, don't you?
Yeah, she's 3.5.
And so at that point, you know, so she would have been 1?
Yeah, 1. Even I think just even before her first birthday, I remember she was just a tiny wee baby in her, and I had some not good thoughts in my head at times. I just wanted to run away, to be honest with you. But then the more I looked at her, the more I thought, Jesus, what am I doing here? Like, you know, I have this beautiful little baby girl here.
But that in itself is such a hard time and such a difficult thing to manage, being a mum, and all the things that go along with that, and the changes that happen so often, because you think you've got one bit sorted and then the next thing happens and you're learning all over again. But then you're having to cope with something else and everything that the future might hold for you, and I guess the uncertainty of that.
Yeah, you never. This is the thing. Do you know? Many people are trying to help me, as in giving me think. You know, could be this, could be that, and I think like knowing my own body, I was very well in tune with my own body. Just being like, you know, an athlete over the years, like you kind of learn. And I think with this one, it was one I knew there was something not right. But like, as I said, trying to deal with having a small baby and trying to ignore what's going on in my head, because, you know, most importantly, I have to see this little baby every day.
So what does day-to-day look like now? What are your symptoms like? How does it affect you?
Symptoms is mostly, so I'm fatigued all the time, most of the time.
She's not ideal when not only you're a baby, but you're also playing elite football.
Yeah, and obviously my job is very physical as well.
Course.
So I have a lot of like cognitive fatigue, so my brain doesn't really function fast as it normally would, and it just absolutely floors me. To be honest with you, sometimes I feel like I've got a bag of water in my brain and it's just going all over the place. It's highly active, my MS. I flare up quite a lot. You know, stress, like even going back to football recently, it's probably triggered me a bit as well, because my body's getting back into the swing of things. And just obviously, but the problem with this is I need to try and stay happy. I've got that wee girl all the time that I need to see to, and I don't want it to affect her in any way, so I have to try and stay positive.
And it goes back to that thing you were saying there. It's easy to say that, isn't it? It's easy to say, I need to stay positive, and you know, there's ways that people can try and support you. But what I don't suppose there's anything really that people can say. So how do you begin to learn to live this new version of your life?
I don't think I have learned to live with it just yet. I think I'm still trying to accept the fact that I will never be the old Alana, and I'm trying to learn to live with this new Alana, which is completely a different version of myself, anyone who knew me before this illness. So it's just, I'm trying to find a way to live with this new version of myself. But, you know, I'm starting to come to terms with knowing what's triggering me, what can trigger me, and just, I think just being honest with myself when I am feeling a certain way, you know.
Yeah.
If I need to just, like, my family are really supportive, as in, like, you know, my mum kind of can look at me and she knows if you want to cry, just cry, Alana. And sometimes I just need to sit there and cry, like, because I need to let it out. And I think just being completely honest with everything is a way for me to come to acceptance with it.
What's the support been like from your teammates, from the club? Because I think your manager, Debbie, had noticed, didn't she? There was something going on. Yeah,
I think me and Debbie had a few words back and forward to each other that season. She wasn't too keen on the person I was becoming, and to be honest with you, I wasn't too keen on the person I was becoming either. And then a few chats were had about it, and then obviously we came to the point realising I had a disease that was changing how I am, and I think it was really tough. It was tough trying to come out and tell the girls about it, but I mean, the girls have been great. They've been there. You know, every training session they're asking me how I am, whether it's sending a text message or they're always checking in on me. And you know, I'm grateful for that, because like we have quite a young squad, so you know, it's completely, like, for younger girls these days, they don't maybe know as much about MS, and it's not something they'll go and look into to find more about it. But just for them to even just send a text message and stuff like that, it's, like, I'm really grateful for it.
For you now, in terms of, excuse me, in terms of treatment that's available, what does that look like for you?
Well, I get Ocrevus. That's the short term for it, because I could never pronounce the long word for it. But I get that every 6 months. I just know that they can't keep you on the treatment for too long, because there is a lot of side effects that come with the treatments. There's a load of different treatments these days. It just depends what works for you. My latest MRI scan has shown kind of it's stable, my MS. So obviously Ocrevus is kind of it's doing its job. Yeah. But I am due to get that on August the 8th. Which I always know when I'm ready to get it. Not that it gives me a massive lift, but you can always feel when you're coming to that dip, like a really bad dip, that you need something just to kind of keep you going again. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to be getting Ocrevus until someone says otherwise, really. But we are trying to raise funds. Like, there's a stem cell treatment in Mexico. They do it in the UK as well, but it costs. Yeah, you can't. It's crazy amounts of money, and the NHS won't give you it.
So the plan would be to try and raise some funds and see how that pans out.
Yeah, my family's done a few already. We've done a few. We've done a wee boogie bingo thing. We raised a good few thousands of pounds to. Do you know, our aim's £50,000. Do you know, whether it takes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, like, I don't care, as long as I can try and raise it and get there eventually. Anything to try and give me a better lease of life.
Yeah, and that focus is having something on the horizon. You think, right, well, if I can work towards that, I would imagine is something that might help. Just a final point on, I suppose, you talked about the old Alana versus this new version of you. Who is this new you?
Oh, she's on an emotional roller coaster every day.
No wonder.
Honestly, I think this new me, I think what it is as well, though, old Alana would do things when she wanted to do them, where I think this new Alana just does them, because, as I said in the VT, that, you know, you can't take days for granted anymore, because I'm going to feel fatigued whether I like it or not. So it's just a case of, you know, pulling up my big girl pants and getting on with it, because this isn't going away. So I really just need to learn to deal with it. My friends, my family understand when I am feeling like that, so none of them try to push me to do things or anything like that. So it's just, again, just knowing what I can do, my limitations, basically.
Will you keep in contact with us and let us know how the fundraising's going? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Right, listen, thank you for coming on. I know that can't have been easy to talk about that on the radio, so hopefully, you know, people that are listening, it's been something that might be helpful for them if someone's going through something similar. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Wish you all the best of luck, Alana.
Thank you, Connie. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Alana Marshall there, who is the captain of Spartans FC, talking about her diagnosis with MS. It is 10:51.
To record sales of new cars and trucks in December, Country Ford is overstocked with late model trades, off-lease auction, and certified pre-owned cars and trucks. Financing as low as 1.9%. Prices slashed to below market levels. Credit problems? No problem. But don't wait. See us now while selection's best.
Whatever it takes. You just can't beat a country-made deal anywhere.
That was it's quite a remarkable story, wasn't it, Alana? Just the fact that she is not only playing elite football with Spartans, she's also got a wee 3-year-old. She's also working as a BT engineer, that physicality that comes along with her job and everything else, and just, you know, trying to remain so positive when something so challenging, you know, knocks at your door. Right, it is time for clue 3 for Name the Place if you're playing along. See if you can get it from this. Clue number 3, it may have aristocratic connections. It may have aristocratic connections. Does that help in any way? Clue 1, today's place name shares part of its name with a Scottish racecourse. Clue 2, it is and it isn't Scandinavian. 80295 if you want to try and see if you know the answer. Ludo Bay says John in Edinburgh. No. Kirkwold, is that right? John in Ellen. Helmsdale, Mike in Port Glasgow. No, it's not. Another couple in Inverary says Liz in Argyll. It's not. Fraserburgh. No. Jedburgh John. No, it's not. 80295 if you think you know the answer. Still to come before 11 though, we're going to be finding out what fubbing is from the woman who calls herself the fubber of the year. Interestingly enough, after 11 o'clock we'll tell you more about that. And keep your questions coming in for our property surgery. Brian Gilmore is standing by to take all of your questions. 80295 is the way to get in touch with him.
Get in touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00. Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
This is BBC Radio Scotland.
Yeah, you can also call Brian as well. That's the number 08085 92 95 00. The property surgery will be with you just after 11 o'clock this morning. But first, sales of, wait for it, cottage cheese are soaring, apparently, and incredibly, it's trending on TikTok with over 600 million views. 600 million views. So why is the 70s staple making a comeback, and how good is it actually for you? Here to discuss, Phoebe Weller, the roving fromagère. Morning, Phoebe.
Good morning.
And we've got Sophie Trotman, who's a registered nutritionist. Morning, Sophie.
Good morning.
Right, Phoebe, how is it actually good for you?
Well, I mean, it's high protein. I just think it's so boring, Connie. It's so boring. And I mean, that's its big thing. You know, that it can be savoury or sweet. And that's...
Doesn't really know what it is.
It's got an identity crisis.
Don't we all?
Identity crisis.
Sophie, as a nutritionist, you're probably better placed to tell us whether it's good for us or not.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a big fan of cottage cheese. It's so versatile. It's really high in protein, and a lot of the time, you know, I see a lot of food diaries, and a lot of the time, kind of as a huge generalisation, I see that particularly women are not getting enough protein in their diet. And one meal where I see protein really lacking is breakfast, and cottage cheese works really well for breakfast. So I'm often recommending it a lot. You know, it might be a bit boring, but when you pair it with other foods, it can be delicious, in my opinion.
Right, what would you pair it with? Because I'm trying to think. I'm not actually sure if... I don't know if I must have tried it at some point in my life, but it's not something that sticks out in my mind, which I think in itself tells a story, perhaps.
That is quite telling. So, you know, I might recommend pairing it with some nuts, some seeds, get some milled flaxseed in there. You want to be opting for the milled, ground up flaxseed rather than the whole flaxseed because it's much more easily absorbed by the body. Maybe some chia seeds and some honey. That's delicious. Maybe I might fold it in some eggs, some scrambled eggs or an omelette. You know, at dinner, I might make a lovely pasta. Instead of using heavy cream, I might use cottage cheese to boost the protein content without dramatically increasing the calories. So it's really versatile. I love it.
Right. As the cheese expert, Phoebe, and I know that you've made it very clear you're not a fan of the old cottage cheese. What's the difference between that and like a soft cheese or I'm thinking of the sort of cheese and chive variety. I won't mention the brand name. I think we know what I'm getting at.
Well, they're all acid curd cheeses. So they're all really, really basic cheeses that have just been acidified. Milk, acidification, they remove some of the whey. And then you just have your curds in your whey with kind of those soft cheeses, the one that you're thinking of, a little bit more whey is removed, so you get a firmer curd. But it's all pretty much the same thing with things added into it. It's just, you see it. It's the progenitor of all cheese. You know, this is the basic building blocks of cheese. All cheese comes from it. It's just baby cheese.
Is this not, though, from your perspective, if you want to get the world into cheese, this is like the gateway cheese? I feel like.
Yeah. But cheese is so amazing, you know. Cheese is so complicated and complex. And it really, you know, if we're talking about increasing the amount of protein, yeah, it increases the amount of protein, but it doesn't give you joy. You know, it doesn't feed in, it doesn't excite the senses in the same way that, I mean, we've talked about adding things to it. But cheese in itself can have all of those qualities, sweetness and savouriness and nuttiness, and it makes us glad to be alive, glad that we can taste things.
I'm not a huge cheese fan. I'm just going to put it out there.
You're not?
No, I'm not. But do you know, I actually
haven't found the right cheese yet.
I had this conversation with my family the other day, right, Phoebe? And I said I'm not really a big fan. And then I went on to list about 6 cheeses that I did like, and they're like, "Well, you obviously clearly are a fan of cheese, then."
What are the cheeses that you like?
Oh, listen, we could be here all day talking about that. But what more interestingly, right? If for example, Sophie, people wanted to get that additional protein in their diet, or maybe they're thinking, I'm not like me, I'm not a huge fan of cheese. Would this be a good way to start? Just a little bit of, you know, starting gently.
I believe so. And, you know, you can even mix it up with things so you can't taste it or even really notice it's there. So a lot of the time when people are making smoothies or shakes in the morning, they're lacking protein. Just add a scoop of cottage cheese in there and you'll be good to go.
Right. Phoebe, with one eye on the fact that the news is on the way, right, what's your favourite cheese?
Sheep's milk. Anything sheepy. See if you could get sheep's milk cottage cheese.
Anything sheepy. Okay.
That's a good idea.
There's a little gap in the market maybe for you. Sophie, what about you?
My favourite cheese? Oh, do you know what? It's got to be Manchego. Delicious.
Okay, right. I'm going to Google that and pretend I know what that is. Sophie, thank you so much for that. Good to speak to both of you. Good to coming up between now and midday.
Another sunny day, another bright blue sky, another day, another young brother died. These are the things I went through when I was growing up.
I will be throwing open the doors to his property surgery shortly, but it's not too late to get your questions in. You can call him right now. The number 08085 92 95 00, or you can send a text on 80295. Also, it could have been maybe having a negative impact on your relationships, but what is phubbing and how can you stop it? And honestly, guarantee you, lots of us should stay tuned to that, because I think many of us are guilty of it. And after Melanie Sykes reveals she believes she's got Tourette's, we'll find out how hard it is to get a diagnosis.
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
But you won't let me love you. Say you want someone to trust in you, baby. Can't you see that's what I'm trying to do? I know you've been hurt before, and you're afraid to try love once more without love by your side. You're only half alive, 'cause everybody needs a love, oh yeah. Everybody needs a love. Say you wanna be kissed,
let me give you clue 4 for Name the Place, right? And clue 4 is this. It has no connection with a marine animal, but it does have a connection with a canine. It has no connection with a marine animal, but it does have a connection with a canine. Clue 1, today's place name shares part of its name with the Scottish racecourse. Clue 2, it is and it isn't Scandinavian. Clue 3, it may have aristocratic connections. Do you think you know the answer? We're looking for a place name in Scotland with those clues. 80295. Right, that's the best way to get in touch with me. Now, it is time for a property surgery with our property guru, Brian Gilmore. If you've got any questions about buying, renting, selling your property, or any paperwork, logistics, anything that comes with it, you can give us a call 08085 92 95 00, or you can send us a text on 80295. Welcome back, Brian.
Hi, Connie.
Right, we've got this text in. Should we just go to it straight away?
Sure.
Martin in Edinburgh. Right, there's quite a lot of detail in this, right? So I'm going to just have to concentrate.
I'll take notes.
Aye, right, here we go. Right, Martin in Edinburgh says, we moved into a 1950s house a few months ago. I've spent much of that time removing 100 feet of 20-foot high hedging from the back garden. When cleared, we revealed what was the original boundary, and he puts in brackets, wire fencing, of adjoining semi-detached house. And it seems that the perfectly rectangular garden, as shown in the title deeds, is obviously not actually a rectangle. In fact, the width of the rear garden extends to 2 metres more than the width of the actual house. Correspondingly, the neighbour's garden affected by this will have their other boundary 1 to 2 metres this side of a boundary brick wall and cuts right through their shed. So the question is, which one is correct? The red box drawn out on the map or the physical, original, in brackets, 70-year-old fence? I would have thought the official boundaries were drawn as guidance and not actually to be taken literally. What do you think?
The correct is the written down version, because somebody could come along and just stick fences down and hedges down and assume that they are correct. So having said that, there may be an element here of over time it has evolved to being this place and everybody just accepts where it is. I think this is one of these things. I mean, I remember being involved in a dispute where a professor of conveyancing was involved because the title plan that people were referring to was 200 years old, and of course the thickness of a red pen 200 years ago was thicker than the red pens that we do today. And there was this whole point about ambiguity about where the line lies. There was much debate about this because of the thickness of a red pen that was 200 years old. So it gives you an idea of how these things can evolve. Any ambiguity about this and any dispute with the neighbours, if it came down to it, somebody would revert back to what the title plans that are registered with the Register of Scotland, which is the world's second oldest heritable property record book in the world that we've got in Scotland. So that takes precedence.
This is a really tricky part of buying any property or even renting a property, that you just don't really know who you're going to end up beside. Are there ways that you can try and, I don't know, ensure that the people that you're moving next to are your type of people?
Well, that's the challenge. I mean, you know, the business that I'm in, we'll sometimes be contacted because someone doesn't like a rental tenant in a property, and obviously there's easier ways of moving somebody on from a property where they are a rental tenant and their behaviour is not great. But a lot of the time, behaviour of people, whether it's tenants or whether it's owner-occupiers that people dislike, it's not criminality, it's just on the cusp of being a pain in the backside.
Yeah, a wee bit antisocial.
Yeah, and so the only things that I always advise people, and of course it's easier, we talked sort of a half an hour ago about the heat being taken out of the market. What I'm about to describe is an easier thing to do when you've not got a hot market where properties are going to closing dates every 5 minutes and you've just got to act really quickly. I always advise to go to an area that you're thinking of buying a property, particularly if it's somewhere you don't know, and go at 2 different times of the day. Try and go maybe in an evening and maybe pre-lunchtime on a weekend day, and that will give you a good flavour. You'll get a feel to what an area's like. Park 3 or 4 streets away from the house that you're interested in. Just go for a wander around those streets in an evening, an early part of the day. You'll get an idea what are the conditions of people's gardens. You know, if it's houses with gardens, what are the conditions of gardens? What are the fences like, and just simple things like that might give you a feel and a flavour, and the noises that are emanating from it. Again, if you're looking at buying a flat, you might want to look, and things can impact on it. Might not just be behaviour of people. You might not be totally aware that there's really strict parking restrictions around the railway station that you think is quite a bit away. It's 10, 12 streets away, but actually Monday to Friday, everybody's parked outside the driveway of that house because they can't get parked close to the train station. So it's things like that, when a market's not so hot, that gives you time to start to get a feel for an area, and yes, feel to find out. I mean, you can always be sod's law that the crazy neighbour is away on holiday and you just go and do the gander around when they're not there.
Would you chat the door?
I don't know. If you're brazen enough, you might want to do that. Hi, I'm thinking of moving into the area. You might want to go 2-3 streets away. I'm thinking of moving into here. Don't really know this area. Can you give me an idea of what it's like? If you're brazen enough to do that, I'm not, but it's a thing to do.
I think maybe if you've been burned in the past, you would be probably more inclined to be like, right, I want to just do a wee bit of due diligence. Because I think sometimes, and you're absolutely spot on, when the market's so hot, people are just firing offers in left, right and centre without really thinking, this is the biggest purchase you'll probably ever make in your life.
Oh, people will go to a supermarket and spend more time debating as to whether to buy the brand own tin of beans or the well known tin of beans than they will do over spent committing, as you say, biggest commitment you will make in your life in terms of costs. And so all of these types of things are really useful. I mean, the benefit of the internet nowadays is you can start to get. You can Google on these various websites that will give you a wee bit more of a flavour to things, things like Facebook, and I think there's another one called Nextdoor. They will often have Facebook pages for an area, so it might give you an idea as to what are the things that people are complaining about in that area. Are they complaining that in the evening time there's lots of people playing very loud music? I mean, again, I'm thinking of booking a holiday for Christmas, New Year time. I spent about 2 hours on the internet last night on TripAdvisor trying to work out which of the reviews were a waste of time and which were worthwhile. How many of us do that type of thing, considering the internet gives us access to all of these resources? Go on Twitter. If you're moving to an area you don't know, go on Twitter and just put that area's name into Twitter and see, how many the police were out taping off the area last night type reports are on Twitter. There's these types of tools that you can give yourself, as well as, for me, the most basic one is just going, parking the car 2 times of the day. You only need to do it twice. If you want to do it a third time, fine. Do it in an evening. If you want to check the rush hour, try and do it in a weekday. Obviously, work restrictions. Try and do it in a weekday morning if you want. Try and do it in an evening. Try and do it in a weekend. It gives you a flavour of the area for you to get to know it. And as you say, if you've been burned, take these steps that you can, but simple ones that you could do even if you've not got that time. Simple ones you might want to do is just go, and most areas have got a Facebook page for that location.
Right, if you are thinking, this is the time for me, I want to sell, or I need to sell for a particular reason, and you're thinking, right, the market might not be as hot as we were saying as it has been, I'm hearing that you can increase your sales price by very, very simple tactics like painting it specific colours. Tell me more. Well,
paint colours have always been something that a lot of people are wary of, because people can be frightened of colour. And I know it sounds a funny thing to say, but they can be frightened of making that bold choice. And there's been a survey out to say that it can make quite a bit of a difference. That softer colours like mint greens and in kitchens, and softer greens and blues in kitchens, greys in living rooms, because that's one of the sort of in colours at the moment. Greys can all be beneficial to the sale of your home, but really, really, really strong, bold colours can be detrimental. And that's what I say by people can be frightened of colour because they can think they're going down the right route. They've read that a nice yellow in the kitchen or a mint green in the kitchen works and a grey, and they go with a really dark grey in the living room, which closes the walls in, makes it smaller. Things like really bright yellows and dark colours can have a negative impact on the property. I remember going to see a flat once that someone was trying to sell, and they had really bright pink on the walls and a black ceiling in the hallway as I walked down the hallway, and it just made their whole hallway feel dark and imposing. So the second I walked in their flat, it felt small, because dark colours bring walls in, light colours make things feel roomier and brighter.
But then there's this sort of counterbalance to that, isn't there, right now, where there's a lot of the sort of on-trend things that you see maybe on social media and whatever else. There's specific colours, though, that can work for, if there's light in a room, for example, or would your advice be to someone, if you're thinking about selling and you've got a wee bit extra cash in the budget to get it organised, just paint everything white?
There is a benefit to that. I mean, the one thing I would always suggest, paint the woodwork in the doors. If you've got skirtings and whatever, paint them white. You'd be amazed how much that lifts up a room. Just a bit of paint. Cleaner. Just makes it look cleaner. The other thing to always be aware of, and without getting into too much scientific detail, because I wasn't that great at science, but the way our eyes see light depend on the way that the light is shining on it. So, for example, if you look at a colour, how many times do you hear people say, well, that colour code that I saw of the paint looks nothing like it did on the walls of the property. So, but that's because sometimes looking down on a colour, it will look very different to where it is on the wall. And then one part of your wall might have the sun shining straight in through the window, and another part might be in the shade, and it'll look like two different colours. So a good thing to do is get a piece of card, paint that card, and then or maybe get 2 or 3 pieces of card and paint it and put it in different places so you see how the light looks on that in different parts of the room. So you get a different flavour of it, because it will look differently on a wall in your house than it will do looking straight down on it. But yes, go and at least paint all the woodwork white. It just lifts up the room.
It means, I suppose, as well, that people are not thinking to themselves, I've got something else to do whenever I move in. We've got another question from Tom. What takes precedence, the SASIN register or land register? Am I saying that right?
It was SASINs. Yeah.
SASIN register or the land register?
So they are... When people use that terminology, they are interchangeable words, for want of a better way. So the SASINs register was what we used to use. So it was all big written down books, handwritten in ink. And then round about 1989, 1990, we changed over to everything being computerised on the land registry. But effectively, the land registry should just be a transfer of what was held in the SASINs.
Right.
Where you might, and so if there's any disparity there, you should contact the person who's called the keeper of the registers of Scotland. If you are aware of a disparity between what the SASINs register says about your property and title and boundaries and what the land registry say, you should contact the keeper of the registers, because the land registry should just be the computerised update, which is based on Ordnance Survey maps of the written down text that goes back hundreds of years.
Okay, hopefully that's helpful for you, Tom. Just a final point to end on. We were talking there about what happens if you're selling your property. What happens if you're in a situation where you need to rent a room from an individual? You would think that's a good way to try and save money, but it's £700. One price for renting one room. It's an average price at the moment. £700 for renting a room.
That seems excessive, and but it comes from the shortage of properties available to let, and particularly in places like Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, St Andrews, Stirling. You'll notice I'm saying the places that have got major colleges and universities. Yep. We've had a stagnation in the number of people who rent properties out. There's a waiting list on social affordable housing waiting list, so we've seen rents increase, and the available number of properties for rent has reduced. And so that's pushed people to do things like rent a room. There's a lot of publicity, and we'll probably see it again in the next couple of months, August, September last year, about people sofa surfing when they were coming up for university. So 700 seems a lot for a room, but it gives you an idea of the challenges that are being faced, particularly people coming up. Students, the student population tend to want to live as close to the university as possible. One of the benefits of student life is not just the education you get, but all the other aspects of social life that comes around that for young people. So you can see £700 for a room for rent is exceptionally high. But it just demonstrates that if you're looking for somewhere to rent, try and be a bit more savvy about it.
That is a lot of money. Right, OK, Brian, always good to speak to you.
You too.
Take care. Thanks very much for that. That was Brian Gilmore there, our property expert. Hopefully that's been helpful for you. It is 25 minutes after 11 right now. It is me until midday, and then Lunchtime Live is on the air. Barry's standing by to tell me what's coming up. Morning, Barry.
Morning, Connie. Yes, today the state of Victoria has pulled out of hosting the next Commonwealth Games, putting the event in doubt. Some say the whole future of the event in doubt. And that means that Scottish athletes competing will be wondering if they'll actually be taking part. And also, will anywhere else step in to host it? Glasgow, of course, does have the infrastructure perhaps after hosting the 2014 Games. We'll be asking if that might be a possibility. Also today, McDonald's has apologised after allegations uncovered by the BBC of a toxic culture of racism and sexual assault. We'll be hearing more on that. Plus a new summit on upgrading the A9, the government committing to a new timetable. Plus, are shark attacks on humans becoming more common?
Hopefully not.
Don't go into the water.
I'm just thinking I might cancel my little dip in the sea for this afternoon. Right, Barry, thank you for that.
You don't know what this means to all of us.
On BBC iPlayer, you'll find what you love. Can't believe we're actually doing this. And love what you find.
I am the leader of this expedition.
Binge watch brilliant shows.
Yes! Oh, mate, that's impressive.
From the latest, I'm Princess Georgiana. Shall we get going? To the greatest.
Nice to meet you, I'm the Doctor.
And live stream BBC TV.
Spin the wheel!
Find your next big obsession. Call me Annika. On BBC iPlayer.
That's something to think about, isn't it? It's definitely made me want to tune into Lunchtime Live to find out what's happening with the Sharks. Right, it is 11:26 and it's time for your fifth clue for Name the Place. A long-lost grave was discovered earlier this year. A long-lost grave was discovered earlier this year. Right, do you know, we're on clue 5. We're still not at the right answer yet. I was convinced that you would have had this before now, says she who hasn't got the answer, but I thought maybe this might have been one that was a little bit easier for you. Right, clue number 1, today's place name is part... its name is part of a Scottish racecourse. Clue number 2, it is and it isn't Scandinavian. Clue number 3, it may have aristocratic connections. Clue 4, it has no connection with a marine animal, but it does have a connection with a canine. Clue 5, a long lost grave was discovered earlier this year. Right, a couple of more wrong answers. Portavadie, says Mike in Port Glasgow. No, it's not. Mike in Port Glasgow again. Ochiltree, no, it's not. 80295. If that helps you in any way, get to name the place for today. Still to come though, what is fubbing and what can you do to try and stop it, and just how difficult is it to get a Tourette's diagnosis these days? We discussed this after TV presenter Melanie Sykes reveals she believes that she's got the condition.
Get in touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00. Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
This is BBC Radio Scotland.
Everything to you. You say you want to start something new, and it's breaking my heart you're leaving. Maybe I'm grieving, but if you want to leave, take good care. Hope you have a lot of nice things to wear, but then a lot of nice things turn bad out there. Oh, breaking my heart in two. Because I never wanna see you sad, girl. Don't be a bad girl. But if you wanna leave, take good care. Hope you make a lot of nice friends out there. But just remember there's a lot of bad and beware. Beware. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. It's hard to get by just upon a smile. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. And I'll always remember you like a child, girl. Baby, I love you, but if you wanna leave, take good care. Hope you make a lot of nice friends out there. But just remember there's a lot of bad and beware. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. It's hard to get by just upon a smile. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. I'll always remember you like a child, girl. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. And it's hard to get by just upon a smile. Oh baby, baby, it's a wild world. And I'll always remember you like a child, girl.
Wild Worlds on BBC Radio Scotland. Now, are you guilty of fubbing? Right, it's the latest buzzword, and there's a good chance you've been doing it. You might even be doing it right now. You might not even be aware you're doing it. It's a word that literally means snubbing someone while you're using your phone. Right, and experts warn that it could be harming your personal relationships. So why do so many of us do it, and how can you stop? Right, here to discuss is a self-proclaimed fubber of the year, Josie Smith. Morning, Josie.
Thank you. I didn't realise I had the official annual accolade, but thank you.
Nor did I, but here you go. We've also got tech expert as well, Dan Sodergren. Morning, Dan.
Good morning.
And Joe Hemmings, who's a behavioural psychologist. Morning, Joe.
Morning.
Right, Josie, you didn't know that you were the fubber of the year, but how often have you been fubbing, and how long have you been doing it for?
Fub all the time. It's good to fub. That's my tagline and slogan. All the time, because in my defence, Your Honour, I am self-employed. I work in social media and amongst other media type work, and you can't really switch off the internet or the world at large. So a lot of my work, it's actually quite beneficial to do it at antisocial times, maybe first thing in the morning or last thing at night when people are scrolling. So to be honest, my phone is basically attached to my hand. My boyfriend is attached to my heart, but he does get ignored and sort of swiped away with my hand, not as in swiping on a phone, quite often. So he would definitely say I was deserving of my accolade / title. But at the same time, can I be bothered stopping this behaviour? Will I stop this behaviour? Have I already tuned out and I'm scrolling on my phone while I'm talking to you guys? Maybe.
Am I already doing the same as I'm talking to you, looking to see how often?
Probably.
No, I'm only joking. Not yet, anyway. Right, Dan, explain to us then, give us a full rundown of what this is. What is fubbing?
Oh, so did you say Dan? Did you say me? I wasn't fubbing at the time, by the way, so that's very important.
Pay attention, Dan. Come on.
Thank you. Well, I know I was listening. This is the thing. I just meant to make sure you said it. I'm not a psychologist, of course. I'm a futurist and a technologist. So, the social media kind of addiction. This is the whole point of fubbing, being on your phone and being on social media when you're talking with someone else. Got to remember that social media kind of went onto this mobile world, and it's completely changed what social media is, because social media has now become much more addictive. In fact, I don't want to go too much about it, but they literally call them in our business, they call them users, because it's that addictive. We literally see them as users. It's designed to get you addicted to being on that device for as long as possible. That's what these things like Instagram and these other things literally were designed to do. A very famous place in Stanford University worked in neurology around the whole thing and neuroscience, and literally, they made them for that. So I talked about this at the race to the bottom of the brainstem about 7 or 8 years ago on the BBC Breakfast, and we were worried about it then. And I don't think it's got any better, because, of course, these things have become much more addictive. But I'm not here to bite the hands that feed me. I teach people about social media. I think there's lots of positives to it. I even now teach people about how to use AI to do the social media. AI marketing course.co.uk. Other courses, of course, are available.
Nice plug there, Dan.
Thank you. Well, one tried. I was paying attention. But my point being is that I'm not here to bite the hands that feed me. I truly believe social media is a massive positive. So is AI. But into this new world where people seem to be more and more addicted to their mobile, that is a problem. This is what phubbing is. It's not paying attention to human beings and the world around you. It's paying more attention to your phone. And all I'd say on this, I'm not a psychologist, but for goodness sake, people, turn your notifications off. That would be a good start. But as I say, I'm a technologist, not a psychologist.
Well, funnily enough, we have a psychologist waiting in the wings here, Joe. What impact can phubbing have, Joe, on our relationships? If we're out for dinner and someone's sitting trying to talk to you, and you're looking at your Instagram feed and there's notifications coming in left, right and centre, and you're on your phone, what's that doing to us?
It's not good. There was actually a study published today, funnily enough, about it and about the impact on married couples, and it significantly increased marital dissatisfaction. Because what happens is, you are saying basically whatever's on your phone, whatever you're looking at, is more important than the partner you're with. And people feel resentful, they feel neglected. It's good quality communication is key in a relationship. And if you are phubbing and on your phone, you're not going to have that communication. The only way it works is when you get something known as double phubbing, which is the way you both do it. Well, it's not great in a relationship, but at least you're both doing it. But yeah, people feel neglected, basically.
Do you have a time, Josie, in your house where you sit and both say, right, no phones away?
My boyfriend tries to say that, but I just tend to ignore him or walk into another room. He's probably actually got quite a sore neck nodding along to this whole conversation we're having. But double phubbing sounds like it could be painful or at least a bit dodgy. But we do double phub when we, I think, quite romantically, competitively play Wordle of an evening or Wordaply. So that is me phubbing, but also not neglecting him.
Or what I do, my husband, is we'll sit on the sofa on the 45 minutes that we've got now, we've got a baby, is that we sit and we'll just send each other memes that I've found,
yes,
that I found on
that's
Instagram.
Very touching. That's quite romantic. But yeah. I mean, I think I'm in a difficult position, but maybe quite a common one, in that I am a phubber, I'm a good phubber, I'm a regular phubber, but I'm also in a relationship with someone who can be a wee bit needy at points. So that can be tricky. But of course you've got to pay your lesser or better half the attention they so richly deserve.
Can I be honest, Josie? It does sound like I don't really blame him for being needy if you're on your phone all the time.
You could be creating the very situation you're talking about today.
I'm not sure how to answer that. We need to get him involved. I'm sure he's really busy.
That could be an item all of its own, couldn't it? let's pencil that in for later in the week. Right, Dan, what about if we talk about, you were mentioning the fact that these devices are designed to do this. Mm-hmm. So in actual fact, is there a way that we can try and, you were talking about turning your notifications off, but are there other ways that we can try and get round this?
Not necessarily there are different things you can do to make sure that they're not hijacking your brain. This is the whole point about the race to the bottom of the brainstem. So there are weird things like you can actually make your phone put it into kind of a dark mode, or dim down the lights on your phone, so to speak, so your screen isn't so bright. That's a way of doing it. You can actually dim down the colours as well, so your brain doesn't get so much dopamine hit each time it does it. I'd say my classic is turn off the notifications. That's always going to be key. And then, I I hate to say it, I've worked in mobile for 20 years, but, there should be times where you can say, look, no mobile phones for a bit, just like there is in the family. You can't be blaming young people to be addicted to mobile phones and then showing them bad behaviour by doing it ourselves. So, put your phone away. And then the classic, of course, is don't use your mobile phone like before you go to bed, because that affects your sleep. So we've got to be really wary and kind of have a kind of a digital green cross code, really. I kind of be mindful of the fact the way we're using these devices, remembering that the social media on a mobile phone is literally meant to be addictive for you, so you stay on the phone. That's how they make money. We've got to make sure that we don't let them. And I think that's really down to us, and maybe slightly down to maybe some education from the government and other people saying, trying to help us a little bit. But we can't keep blaming other people. Most of the time, it's just us doing it, isn't it?
Joe, do you have anything to add to that in terms of tips for people if they're sitting thinking, this is me, this is definitely me. I can hear myself in this, and I want to be a non-fubber.
I agree with Dan, everything he said. I think the thing is, it's about control. You have to learn that your phone isn't controlling you and you control it. And of course, the addiction thing makes it very difficult. But I think with couples, we all have boundaries in our relationships, whether they're implicit boundaries or spoken boundaries. And I think this is something you need to talk about and say, I don't like it. Can we not do it? Like when we're out for dinner, just put your phone away. So just have that conversation, because what you don't want is resentment to build up and it damages your relationship perhaps permanently. You need to talk about it when there's an issue. And if that person is unable to stop fubbing, well, you've got trouble ahead.
Josie, do you get to a situation when you're on a plane that you're like, oh no, what do you do with your phone when you're on a plane?
Do you know what? It's really weird you say that, because I was on a plane for the first time in what felt like an age recently, and I sort of forgot my way of working on a plane. So I didn't have a book, I didn't have my laptop with anything downloaded on it. And to be honest, being alone rather with my own thoughts for approximately an hour on the way down to London was horrific, and not an experience that I actually want to repeat anytime soon. But I'm sorry, Michael. That's my boyfriend, if he's listening. I'll try and be a better person, and I am feeling like slightly bad now. So,
he's still there.
I'll try and improve.
It can't be that bad, let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, this is true, but I'm feeling a bit guilty now, I have to say.
Right. Well, don't feel guilty. It was good to hear your honest fubbing. And I
at least I'm an honest fubber.
Exactly.
I'm not kidding myself on about it.
That's the best kind.
The conscious bit. Self-awareness is the first step. There you go.
It is the first step.
Exactly. And then just modify your behaviour with a bit of meditation. I said meditation, not medication.
Yeah, I was going to say meditation.
Very important. Yeah,
meditation. Very important. Right, there we go. Right, are you a fubber? 80295. Let me know your thoughts on this. Josie, Dan, Joe, great to speak to you guys. Speak to you soon. Yeah, that's the best way to get in contact if you are a self-professed fubber. Right, by the way, it is 11:42. Listen to this. You know what that noise means? We have a right answer on Name the Place. I'm going to just find out who it was, actually. Who was the right answer for Name the Place? I'll get the name in just a second for you. It was Bob. Right, well done, Bob, to you, because you managed to get the right answer. I'm going to give you the second clue for Name the Place, right, in just a second. It is clue number 6, a ceremonial clue that took place at an Edinburgh church last month. A ceremonial clue that took place at an Edinburgh church last month. Can you be like Bob? Can you get the right answer? 80295. Let's get some more music. This is Emma McDonald. star who previously been diagnosed with autism was talking to Alan Carr on his podcast Life's a Beach when she said that she'd self-discovered that she had the condition. She later clarified this, saying she's not been diagnosed, but she self-identifies as having Tourette's from her own studies and understanding of the pre-existing conditions that are hand in hand with some autistic people. Other celebrities who've opened up about living with Tourette's recently, you'll have heard about Lewis Capaldi and Billie Eilish. So what actually is the condition and what effect can it have? And just to be aware, involuntary strong language can be part of the conditions. I'm sure some people might be aware. Not for everyone, of course, but just to bring that to your attention in case you hear some involuntary swearing. With an ex-guest, Ross Anderson, was diagnosed with Tourette's when he was 12. Morning, Ross.
Hi, good morning.
And we've also got Pippa McLuhan, who's a communications and project manager for Tourette's Action. Morning, Pippa.
Good morning, Connie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Now, Ross, when you were diagnosed at 12, was that while you were at school? What was the sort of process for you?
Yeah, so I would have been just in secondary school, I think first or second year there, when I was diagnosed. I'd been showing symptoms since I was about a toddler, but we had no idea really what it was until the diagnosis, really.
And so you've shown symptoms from you were a toddler, and what was the difficulty sort of pinpointing the fact that it was Tourette's?
We just didn't know about it. I was taken to the doctor when I was a kid because I had a lot of sniffing and coughing twitches, and I was actually treated for asthma. I was given an inhaler and things like that. They just didn't know what it was, and then when I was about 11 or 12, my mum heard about Tourette's, but she thought, I didn't have the swearing and that kind of thing, so she wasn't sure, so we got referred to a paediatrician, and that's when I was first sort of diagnosed. I was diagnosed after that, but that's when it first kind of came into our scope.
And that is a really important point to mention, Pippa, isn't it? The people will a lot of the time associate Tourette's with the swearing tics that sometimes come about, but that's not always the case for everyone.
No, that's right. So swearing is not actually a criteria for diagnosis of Tourette's, and it affects probably 10 to 20% of people. But it's one of the most difficult tics to deal with, and we think that people with coprolalia, which is what the swearing tic is called, need to be treated kindly and with understanding, definitely.
Whenever you look at the discussions that Melanie Sykes was having on that podcast, as I was mentioning, she's talking about she's not been diagnosed with Tourette's, but and it's more tricky these days, I guess, to actually get to that point of diagnosis where we're just hearing Ross's experience there. Why is that, and is it getting any better?
So Tourette's is not a rare condition. A lot of people might be surprised to know that it affects 1 in 100 school children and has a similar prevalence to childhood epilepsy and autism. We all know so much more about epilepsy and autism than we do Tourette's. And sort of 300,000 people are living with Tourette's in the UK. So we should have more access to services than we have. But unfortunately, it's sort of gone under the radar.
Yeah.
But we are pushing for nice guidelines because there currently aren't any nice guidelines for Tourette's. But we hear from people all the time that getting a diagnosis can take years, 2-3 years, which, there just aren't enough therapists and specialists out there that can identify and treat the condition, unfortunately.
And Ross, because of that, because of what Pippa's saying, did you find it difficult when you were at school explaining to people what was going on and what was happening to you?
Yeah, again, I didn't really know that much about it. I tried to learn whatever I could after I was diagnosed, but we weren't really, after I was diagnosed, we were basically given a sheet of paper saying this is what it is, and they just tried to put me on medication for it, which didn't take very well. I was never really given counselling or psychiatry or anything like that. Again, we're lucky. I'm very lucky that I have such a fantastic support system around me. And nowadays, I know there's some fantastic organisations, like in Scotland, you have Tourette's Action, that help with these kind of things. But like you said, there's not enough help out there. I think in general for all mental health kind of issues, because again, Tourette's is people with Tourette's don't just have Tourette's. They'll have things like OCD, they'll have anxiety, they'll have depression. They're more likely to be on the autistic spectrum, things like that, which aren't picked up on as much.
Yeah, the other comorbidities that happen alongside that. Just a final point from you, Ross. How are you managing it now?
I'm okay. I mean, my main struggle has been through anxiety and OCD with the Tourette's. I had hit a pretty hard patch when I was 19, 20, about a long time ago, 15 years ago, but I've been steadily working my way up through then, mostly again from the support from my family, from my nurse. Unfortunately, the services aren't quite there within the health system, but that's something, I'm trying to get into advocacy to push towards making these things more accessible to everyone, again, with Tourette's and with other, less known mental health issues.
Listen, Ross, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you coming on and explaining what it looks like for you, because I think you're absolutely spot on. It can look very different for many different people. That was Ross Anderson there, who was diagnosed with Tourette's when he was 12, talking about his experience, and also Pippa McLuhan, Communications and Project Manager for Tourette's Action. Thanks for your time this morning, Pippa.
Thank you for having me.
OK, you're listening to BBC Radio Scotland. It is just coming up to 11:53.
Football. This is the chance they've been waiting for.
Is
got to be
back.
How much we've missed it.
It's the Scottish League Cup across July.
So plenty to play for this afternoon.
There are no certainties in the Cup. I will keep you across all this evening's goals.
Catch the group stage at the weekend and midweek with Sports Sound.
Don't miss a moment of the action.
It's a better delivery and it's Thunderdome.
Scottish football lives here.
BBC Radio Scotland.
Can't get enough Memphis Wrestling? You need Memphis Wrestling Plus. Subscribe today at memphiswrestlingplus.com.
Catch up on the conversation. Listen via the BBC Sounds app.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Really insightful that from Ross, wasn't it? Just to get a bit of an idea of probably what a lot of people think Tourette's is, and knowing that actually it can look and feel a lot different for a lot of people. Right, name the place. The big reveal is on the way. Thank you to Lynn in Aberdeenshire. She said Fraserburgh. No, it's not. And Inverary says Liz in Argyll. No, it's not. Jedburgh, John and Paisley. It is not. The answer to name the place for today is on the way next. Let's go.
No, I don't see it often, and I probably should have told you I heard this back. I know, and I probably shouldn't want this so bad. It's weighing on me. Don't wanna wake up in the morning. Cannot undo what we did in this bed, and I can't get you out, so I gotta go. No, I'm not ready for you. Want me all alone, but I'm undecided, excited, ignited, and I don't wanna feel the way I do, but I like it. Look at all these sparks flying, but I'm still indecisive, and she want me to wipe it, but I know I shouldn't be doing this, but here we go again. Girl, you know that pussy is my weakness. Yeah, you got me addicted when you're switching position. You tell me shut up, and you know I listen. I hate it, wishing that I did it. I can't keep sitting and pretending. I'm taking off your clothes. We getting sexual. It is so good, think I propose. I don't know, but I'm undecided, excited, ignited, and I don't wanna feel the way I do, but I like it. Look at all these sparks flying, but I'm still indecisive, and she want me to wipe it, but I'm undecided. Oh no, I'm undecided. Cause I'm undecided. No, baby, I'm afraid of your love. Oh, ooh, you got me, baby. Cause I can't get enough. I'm undecided, excited, ignited, and I don't wanna
BBC Radio Scotland. Right, another busy day for Name the Place this morning. Let's catch up with Carol Huff to find out exactly where today's clues lead us. Morning, Carol.
Morning, Connie.
Well done, a big well done this morning to Bob in Mauchline, who came in with the right answer, 11:38 this morning. Well done to Bob. Also, we've got to mention George in Pennycook. He got the answer just 1 minute later. So well done to George.
Well done, both of them.
Right, will we get the drum roll? Where are we today?
Dolphinton. Dolphinton, on the border between South Lanarkshire and the Scottish borders.
Yes, and I know it well because that's the route I go if I'm going to Manchester from Edinburgh. There you go, little fact for you there. Right, how do we get there?
Okay, so clue one, it shares part of its name with a Scottish racecourse. Dolphinton means dolphin's settlement, from a Scandinavian personal name, dolphin, and Old English dún, meaning settlement.
Mm-hmm.
So Hamilton Park is also from a place name from Old English dún with a personal name, Hamilton's settlement. So clue two, it is and isn't Scandinavian. So although the personal name dolphin is Scandinavian linguistically, the person who bore it may not have been. Once names are in the name pool, they can be given to anyone. So people from biblical personal names like John from Hebrew or Peter from Greek, they're not necessarily from Israel or Greece. So we don't know whether Dolphin himself was Scandinavian or not.
Mm-hmm.
But clue three, it may have aristocratic connections. Dolphin was the name of the eldest son of the 11th century Earl Gospatrick. So it's been suggested that Dolphinton may refer to him. But, on the other hand, 8 other people are on record with the same name from about the right time.
Okay.
And no doubt there are others as well, so the place name could really refer to any of them. Clue 4, it has no connection with a marine animal, but it does have a connection with a canine. The place name has nothing to do with dolphins, but it is associated with Tam, the Skye Terrier who played Greyfriars Bobby in the 1961 Walt Disney film. And that was clue 5, the long-lost grave discovered earlier this year. That was Tam's grave. It was found near Dolphinton in January. With considerable excitement.
Yes.
And clue 6, a ceremonial clue took place at an Edinburgh church last month. That's when Tam's ashes were taken from Dolphinton to Edinburgh and reinterred at a ceremony at Greyfriars Kirk on the 16th of June.
Oh, a special moment. Right, okay. Carol, as always, you've blown my mind. Thank you very much for all your hard work today. Well done to George and well done to Bob. I'm back tomorrow morning. Time to hand you over to Lunchtime Live.
Thank you, Connie.